My name is Karen Hines, and I will be introducing tonight's talk by the esteemed Jonathan Schooler. The subject of this evening's talk is how openness is the new mindfulness. The Institute of World Culture has 10 guiding aims. Tonight, we'll be focused on aim number 9, to assist in the emergence of universal culture and the continuous growth of nonviolence of mind, generosity of heart, and harmony of soul. Our speaker this evening, Dr. Jonathan Schooler, is a distinguished professor of psychological and brain sciences at the University of California, Santa Barbara. He's the director of UCSB's Center for Mindfulness and Human Potential and acting director of the Sage Center for the Study of the Mind. His research intersects philosophy and psychology, including the relationship between mindfulness and mind wandering and theories of consciousness. For those of you who are here in person tonight, the restroom is to your right. For any questions about the Institute or its programs, please contact Jerry at worldculture.org. And now, please join me in giving a very warm welcome to Jonathan Schooler.
Thank you so much. Remind me how long I should talk for?
Well, now that we had 2 minutes of tech issues, no, I'm just kidding. I mean, we'll let this flow for like an hour and then see where we are.
Cool. Someone's got something going on. Okay. Greetings, everybody. It's wonderful to see you all. A lot of friends in the audience, so that makes this extra special. Today, I want to talk about openness as the new mindfulness. And can we switch to slides? Great. So today's thesis is that fostering openness could catch on and enhance both individuals and society, potentially as much or more than cultivating mindfulness. So this is a pretty big claim because mindfulness is, as you all know, such a big thing. And then in addition, I want to acknowledge that I'm not suggesting replacing openness with mindfulness, but in fact that the two could be combined, and that combining openness with mindfulness might produce this really synergistic quality of what we might refer to as open mindfulness. So let's first take a very brief exploration of how mindfulness has fared in the last 30 years or so. So here we have a graph looking at scientific studies on meditation or mindfulness from 1970 to 2016. As you can see, it was pretty steady, and then it really sort of took off in the late 90s, and it's just really sort of showed exponential growth. Here's a more recent graph that takes us all the way to 2022, and as you can see, up until 2020, it was still growing, although, interesting, starting to slump a little bit, possibly suggesting that it needs a kick in the butt, a new element, something fresh. But in addition to research on mindfulness, it's also really captured the public's imagination. Time has had multiple issues devoted to meditation and mindfulness, and it's really taken on. Everybody understands about mindfulness. They've heard of it. They know. They probably don't meditate themselves, which is actually an interesting thing. People know it's a good idea, but they don't really like to meditate. So this is where openness may offer another advantage as well. So the idea, what I'm going to be arguing today, is that, and I'll tell you what openness is in just a second, but that openness is a quality that has many, many virtues, and that it can be cultivated in ways somewhat akin to the way that mindfulness is cultivated, but actually in ways that may be more fun besides. Okay, so you're probably wondering, what is openness? And actually, openness is short for openness to experience. And this is not my construct. This is actually what is known as one of the big 5 personality traits. These are the big 5 personality traits. This is the way when psychologists attempt to understand personality, they look at how people vary, and they find that there are these 5 qualities that are the major dimensions on which people vary. First and foremost is openness. By the way, the acronym, if you want to remember this, is OCEAN, which stands for openness, conscientiousness, extroversion, agreeableness, and neuroticism. But openness is the quality that I want to emphasize today, although I will say that it's probably also, if you could increase people's average conscientiousness, a lot of things, more things would get done. Extroversion, people would be more social, and agreeableness. So all of these are actually qualities that would be useful to cultivate. We're going to focus on openness. But one of the key things that I can't emphasize enough is that when psychologists talk about the ocean, about these 5 personality traits, they think of personality as a fixed quality. They think of personality as you've got a certain amount of openness, you've got a certain amount of conscientiousness, and that's where you stand. But one of the really important things about mindfulness is what research showed, and I've been involved in some of this research, is that you can actually, through experiences, shift people's mindfulness. So mindfulness could also be thought of as a personality trait, and people got moved on mindfulness, and that raises the possibility that these other traits might also be malleable, that we might be able to shift people where they stand overall on these things. And another key thesis that's stealing a little bit of my thunder here is that the way that you increase a personality trait is by increasing that state of it. So the idea that we'll be exploring today is if you can regularly experience states of openness, that can then lead to changes in the trait of openness. But let's explore, why would you even want to do that? Let's first talk about the personality trait of openness. So here are the facets of openness, and my guess is that many of you here would score high on openness. One key element is fantasy. I have a very active imagination. That's also related to creativity, as we'll come back to in a moment. Another is aesthetics. I'm intrigued by patterns I find in art and nature, and we'll be coming back to art later on because nature and art seem to be really important conduits for openness. Feelings. I experience a wide range of emotions and feelings. Ideas, this is key and also closely related to curiosity. I often enjoy playing with theories or abstract ideas. Values, I consider myself broad-minded and tolerant of other people's lifestyles. And you can see how this would be really helpful for world culture if we could have a little bit more of that. And actions, I think it's interesting to learn and develop new hobbies. So I think you can see just by looking at these items that these are qualities that we would really like to see in ourselves and in others. But let me try to make that case a little stronger by talking about some of the different qualities that the personality trait of openness is associated with. First, and this is really one of the most important things, openness is associated with creativity. Now, unfortunately, creativity is itself associated with intelligence. So in order to be creative, it helps to be intelligent. But when you combine creativity and intelligence together, you can see that you really get a big difference. So this is people who are high in intelligence but low in openness, and they're much less creative than the people who are high in intelligence and high in creative. And even the medium intelligence people, if you're high in openness, you can really get the maximum creativity. So you can see that creativity is really closely aligned with openness. And just pause for a second. Think how important creativity is for culture. I mean, the advances of humanity rely on creativity, rely on the creative advance. Every different area, from accounting to art to saving the environment, all these things depend on creativity. But that's not all. It's also associated with job advancement. So this looked at the relationship between managerial job advancement and the ocean, all the different personality traits. And as you can see, the only one that predicted job advancement was openness. It's also associated with metacognitive awareness. This is actually an area that I'm very interested in, which is the capacity to understand and regulate one's own cognitive processes. So recognizing when you're experiencing an emotion, recognizing when you need to modulate yourself because you're losing your temper or something of that sort. Openness is associated with that. It's also associated with intellectual humility, the ability to recognize that your opinion is not the only opinion of value, to appreciate and to be interested in perspectives other than your own. Again, you can see how much that would be helpful to have more of in today's world. And it's nearly identical, it's very, very close with curiosity, the desire for new knowledge or information that motivates a person to engage in learning and exploration. Curiosity is really at the heart of openness. It's the desire to understand things you don't understand, to explore. Openness to experience. You're curious, so you want to have new experiences. So it's sometimes said that curiosity killed the cat, and I do think it's possible to be excessively curious in certain situations. But in general, particularly epistemic curiosity, trying to understand things, and perceptual curiosity, trying to really extract as much as you can from the environment, these are typically very valuable qualities. But that's not all. It's also associated with people's effort to gain knowledge. So in this study done by Clara Zadalis, she gave people trivia questions, and they had to move a bunch of sliders to different locations in order to get the answer to the question. And so this provided a behavioral measure. How many sliders would they be prepared to move to get the answer to the question? And people who scored high in openness were more likely to move more of these sliders. So people who are high in openness are willing to put in effort to try to discover new things. But if none of those things appeal to you, maybe you'd be interested in living longer. And it is a remarkable fact that openness to experience seems to be a predictive of overall mortality. The more open people are to experience, the less, in this study, the less heart issues they had, but overall mortality also was observed. One of the key things that is worth noting is that as people get older, they oftentimes decline in their openness to experience. And this actually, you can kind of understand that. As you get older, you learn what you like, you learn what you don't like, and so it kind of makes sense that you would focus on the things that you like. Nevertheless, maintaining that openness to experience, maintaining that curiosity seems to be what it means to be young at heart. And that's going to be one of the arguments that I make for why I think it is that openness to experience facilitates longevity. It also means that your mind is staying active. And when your mind is staying active, then you're going to reduces your risk of Alzheimer's and other things of that sort. It's also, but there's even more. Openness predicts concern for the future of humanity. So they compared people in the general population to long-termists. These are people who have a deep concern about the future of humanity. And as you can see, the long-termists score higher in openness than does the general population. And finally, it predicts reduced prejudice and authoritarianism. Again, something that is very important, particularly in today's world. Now, some people who know the construct well may say it's also associated with a slightly left-liberal, left-leaning political orientation, and I don't know about that. But what I would, frankly, I'm pro-left liberal myself, but leaving that aside, what I would argue is that in fact part of why we are where we are today is because the left lost their open-mindedness. They lost their openness when they started having cancel culture, when they started rejecting, I can't hear this because it offends me. That type of thinking is not open. That type of thinking is not showing intellectual humility. It's like, I'm right and I don't want to hear perspectives different from my own. So I think that the left, in losing its openness, contributed to the state of affairs today. So actually, I think really to be truly open to experience is to be open to ideas from the left, to be open to ideas from the right, and to basically be willing to recognize that there are other perspectives valuable besides your own. Well, maintaining openness then may be the source of sustained creativity, central for human flourishing, including increased concern for the future of humanity. It's also associated with a concern for nature, an appreciation of nature, and so many other things. The fountain of youth, potentially. And I want to argue that the way that it may serve as the fountain of youth is because what we need to do is it cultivates a childlike wonder and essentially keeps one young at heart. So the idea then is that if we could cultivate openness, all these really valuable things might emerge. Let me just pause there. That's sort of the first phase, and see if there are any questions. Happy to take a question or two now, and if not, we can keep going. Okay. Oh yes, there we go. Great.
So you had up there some things correlating with other things it
Yeah.
looked like, and it was 0.335 and all this.
Right.
But I've looked at many studies, but I wasn't exactly sure what those meant.
Oh yeah. Thank you. I oftentimes talk to scientific community, so it's great to be reminded. So a correlation essentially tells you.
So that was just a I knew what that is.
Yeah,
I wasn't 100% sure, and so.
Well, but let me just say though. So a correlation basically just expresses the degree to which one thing is associated with another thing, and so the more one thing is associated with another, the more when you see one, you see the other, the higher the correlation that you find. Is there a question in the back there?
Yeah. Can you be open?
Say that again? Oh, so actually, I would say younger, more open. So kids are the most open of all of us. As we get older, we become less and less open. So kids are very exploratory. They're incredibly curious. They have childlike wonder. Everything intrigues them. They want to understand and learn. And some of them keep that, and then others of us tend to lose it. So you probably have openness, and keep it up. Okay, so can openness to experience be enhanced? So now we're shifting here to talking about some research. And one line of research is that we've been done, and I mentioned that my lab has been involved in studying mindfulness, and that's really been a primary area of research that I've been conducting for some time. And in the process of doing this, we did the Plasticity Initiative, which essentially was led by Michael Mrazek, who's now an was a graduate student of mine. He's now an associate professor at the University of Houston in Austin. And we did 3 studies, all of which were just Herculean effort on Mike's part. He designed it, he ran it all himself with help, but he led the whole thing. And what this involved, it was known as the SIT study, for Summer Intensive Transformation Study, and then also because there was a lot of sitting and meditation. And what it involved was 5 hours, or 5.5 hours a day, 5 days a week for 6 weeks with students from UCSB. And they engaged in meditation, yoga, exercise, and instruction, sort of Dharma talk types of things. So there definitely was sort of mindfulness heavy, but also a lot of yoga and exercise. And then we basically measured the kitchen sink. We looked at a whole bunch of things before and a whole bunch of things after, and we did what's known as a waitlist control, where some participants got everyone was tested at 3 times. Before the intervention, half the people got the intervention, half the people were just on a wait list, then tested again, so that gives you the control, and then everyone was tested a 3rd time, which allowed us to see what happened after 6 weeks of having completed the intervention, and did the benefits persist. And I'm going to show you a very busy chart here, and this is really not the focus, but I just want to show you. This is known as Cohen's d, so this is the effect size. This is basically showing how big an effect, how big the difference was between the manipulation, the sit condition, and the waitlist control. And what you can see here is that on a variety of different health measures, large effect sizes. On a variety of different cognitive measures, really large effect sizes on a variety of different psychological scales, including well-being and reduced stress, large effect sizes. And although we don't have time to really go into it, big changes in brain connectivity. Certain parts of the brain, something known as the default network, which is sort of the mind-wandering network, that tended to be less connected to other regions. People were mind-wandering less. And other regions, such as the insula, which is associated with interoceptiveness, so awareness of your interior state, that was increased in connectivity with other regions. But although we didn't talk about this particular finding in this study, we also found that participation in the intervention led to increases in openness to experience. So suggesting that there really, even though mindfulness and openness are distinct constructs, mindfulness is basically about present focused awareness. Nevertheless, when you encourage people to take this really extensive course in engaging in meditation and exercise and all these talks, we did see an increase in openness to experience. So initial suggestion that openness to experience can be enhanced through these kinds of activities. There's also been research, this has probably occurred to a few of you in the audience, that psychedelics might be associated with openness to experience. And indeed, there's very compelling evidence. This is research done at Johns Hopkins by Catherine McLean. And in this study, they gave people supervised psychedelics, psilocybin, on several occasions over about a week's time, where they were very comfortable, where there was a trained therapist in the room, and they measured their openness to experience before that, and then they measured it again a year later. And the people who had had these psychedelic experience showed sustained changes in openness to experience. One of the first studies really to demonstrate that the trait of openness to experience can be enhanced. More recently, Stiegler et al. Developed an intervention that's similar to what we've been using something known as implementation intentions. And implementation intentions is actually a really, really valuable way of achieving your goal. So we all have goals. We all say, I'm going to do X or I'm going to do Y. And then oftentimes that doesn't end up happening. And implementation intentions is a particular technique that helps people to be more successful in carrying out their goals. So if you want to be open, or if you have an implementation intention, let me give you another example. Let's say you want to drink less, okay, as your implementation intention. So if you just tell yourself, I want to drink less, that doesn't get necessarily activated at the right times. But if your implementation is, if a waiter or waitress asks if I want a second alcoholic beverage, I'll ask for sparkling water. Okay, now you have a very specific situation. When this happens, I'll do that. And what this allows is for you to automatize the goal. So now you don't have to think drink less. You just have to remember when you get asked, do you want a second drink, have a sparkling water instead. So that same basic idea of implementation intentions was applied by Stiegler to doing novel things. So for example, if I come home after work, then I'm going to try a new recipe. So they're taking a particular situation, coming home from work, and that's the incentive or the reminder to engage in this particular activity. So, and we're going to build on that idea in the project that I'm going to talk about right now. So at this point, it's really important for me to emphasize my former graduate student, postdoc, and now research scientist in the lab, Madeline Gross, who's really been at the forefront of all the research I'm going to be telling you from here on in. And this first paper just recently came out in the Journal of Positive Psychology, Smartphone-Based Program for Enhancing Curiosity and Its Associated Virtues, a randomized waitlist control pilot study. And so in this study, what happened was that Madeline developed this app that was cultivating curiosity. And it's important, as I mentioned at the outset, that recognize that curiosity is really the core of openness. And it's associated with a lot of the same characteristics as openness, including creativity, meaning in life, life satisfaction, academic achievement, and relationship satisfaction. It's also associated with longevity. what she did is develop this smartphone-based app that harnesses the habits, habit formation, the implementation intentions that I mentioned before to cultivate a curiosity. And incidentally, we have a beta version of a new version of this app that's available. And at the end of the talk, I'll give you a URL and you can download it for yourselves. So stay tuned for that. So in addition to cultivating curiosity, this app also was a goal was to curate mindfulness. As I mentioned, one of the theses that we've been exploring is that the combination of openness and mindfulness might be especially powerful. Mindfulness, of course, is paying attention with curiosity to everyday experiences. And it's also helpful because if you're paying attention, if you're mindful to what you're doing, then you're going to be mindful of the exercises that you're doing on the app. And that may also help to foster curiosity. Okay, so the way the project worked is we had a pretest in which we measured people's a variety of different measures, in particular curiosity, but also meaning in life, boredom, other things like that. Then there was an experimental condition, and there was experimental conditions and a control. And within the experimental condition, we had two different inductions or two different interventions. One was just the behavioral strategies only, so the activities to foster curiosity, and then a second one which also introduced a mindfulness. And then we had the post-test, and the prediction was that the experimental conditions would do better than the control, and that the behavioral strategies with mindfulness would do better than behavioral strategies only. Okay, so here is the nice video that Madeline put together that sort of was given to all the participants before participating in this experiment to encourage them to value and be interested in cultivating curiosity. And let's see if this works.
Curiosity is not just about constantly finding interesting things to do. It is also about making everyday things interesting, no matter how trivial or even boring they may be. The bulk of our lives is not spent skydiving, traveling to exciting places, partying with our friends. The vast majority of our lives is made up of relatively mundane occurrences: waking up, getting dressed, brushing our teeth, eating meals, driving in a car or riding a bike, working, going to the store, waiting in line, etc. Making the most of your life means turning every moment into an opportunity for meaning or wonder. In this program, we hope to help you accomplish just that. The power of curiosity to contribute to a fulfilling existence cannot be emphasized enough. Curiosity has been linked to happiness, health, creativity, satisfying intimate relationships, increased personal growth after traumatic experiences, and increased meaning in life. The takeaway? Curiosity is a superpower we all have, if we decide to use it. But what about those of us who think of ourselves as standoffish by nature, who shrink back at the thought of taking up scuba diving or even a new route to work? A strong sense of curiosity is not a stable trait that you either have or don't. Psychologist Jonathan Schooler states, even if you don't think of yourself as naturally curious, it's helpful to remember that curiosity can be cultivated, just like any skill. And if you already are a curious person, your curiosity can be cultivated even more. We are all born with an abundance of curiosity, and this innate drive for exploration can be built upon. We simply need to find the best ways to harness it. Your brain has incredible transformational potential. By cultivating new habits, we can literally rewire our brain, and in so doing, take steps to becoming more of who we want to be. In this program, we're going to guide you on how to cultivate a sense of curiosity in everyday life. The program has two components: daily behavioral goals and mindful curiosity lessons, which will allow you to transform daily activities into moments of meaning, interest, or even pleasure. Throughout this program, you will be pushed to step outside your comfort zone. It is a good thing to feel uncomfortable at times. By pushing yourself, you will grow more, and you will learn what you are capable of. We are excited to start you on this path. Let's get started.
So that kind of got people primed for this app. Oh, no, okay. So in this app, we have well, I'll first tell you about the behavioral part and then the mindfulness part. And the behavioral part had several elements to it. First, individuals generated their own behavioral goals that they commit to over the course of the intervention. So here we gave them the opportunity, we sort of gave them the idea of the kinds of new experiences that they might want to try to develop for themselves, and then they themselves identified a set of different goals that they would do every day, such as engaging in connection or eating something new. And then in addition to their goals, we also introduced daily challenges in which we gave them goals to engage in that we believed would be helpful for fostering a curiosity. And these all involved 3 different levels of engagement. Now, one of the things about an app like this is that not everyone is going to have the same amount of time or energy to devote to an activity. And so what we wanted to do is to allow them to sort of customize it so they could choose, today, what do I feel like? So we gave them 3 different levels of engagement. They could do a curiosity teaser, a curiosity booster, which was harder, or a curiosity launchpad, which involved even more involvement. So depending on the particular demands of the day, they could choose which one they wanted to try. So let me give you some examples, and then we'll let you do one yourself. So a curiosity task teaser would be break your routine. So this is a light curiosity element. Find a way, no matter how small it is, to transform your usual habit and break from your routine. Here are some ideas. Work outside. Switch the order of your morning routine. Sit at the other side of the table. Sleep on the opposite side of the bed. So not really a major commitment, but nevertheless doing something different, being exploratory in a significant way. And in all of these cases, we wanted them to provide some evidence that they actually did it. So in this case, write down what you ended up doing. The next one was a curiosity task booster. This is a little bit more involved. Transform your current experience. So this one was write a haiku about this moment. Transform your current experience into art by creating a haiku about this moment. A haiku is a 3-line poem with 17 syllables written in a 5-7-5 syllable count. This simplicity enables the writer to condense the senses, to choose words carefully, to select the perfect moment worth capturing. Haiku can be elegant, funny, or simply profound. There is much to be found in its simplicity, so people would do that and then write down their haiku poem. You may have wondered what that pencil and card was for, and it was because we're now going to do a curiosity task booster. So what I'd like you all to do is to try your hand at a haiku. It has 5-7-5 syllable count. So here are 2 examples. Taste of morning tea, the delicate ray of sun through an icicle. And so you just count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. You see how that works? And then another one, in case you didn't get it. As winter draws near, fabulous floral worlds bloom, the solace of books. So it's really very elegant, very simple. So no pressure. Just give it your best shot. Take a couple minutes. All right. In the interest of time, for those of you who haven't finished, let me encourage you to take it home and keep that curiosity alive. But for those of you, anyone, come on now. This is going to be tough. But someone be brave and share their. Okay, yeah, in the back there.
Open me up more, please. Help me to feel all there is. Lifelong learner, me.
Nice. Tough act to follow, but I think I saw another hand. Yeah.
Sitting in the dark, might we have some light, she said. Oh, exclaimed a man.
Nice. These are great. Some more. Yeah.
Bubbles on the tongue, bursting as they travel down, and now comes a belch.
That's great. Any others? Yeah. Yeah.
Darkness and light dawn, a sound of breathing softly, a moment to be.
Beautiful. Yes.
Going away now is making every second count, time and time again.
Wow. These are pretty deep. Yeah.
Parked illegally, feeling like a happy cat, smiling through this top.
and relevant too. Any others? Yeah.
The sadness changes, silence becomes openness. Goodbye, coming in.
Ooh, beautiful. Any others? Yeah.
Our curiosity expanded with our growing. Thank you, Jonathan.
Any others? Yeah.
Sun falls on my skin, a smile beams across my face, happy I am now.
Beautiful.
I got one last.
Okay, yeah, Justin.
My heart hurts each day, but with good friends it fills again. I have found my place.
Nice.
Random. That has to do with nobody.
Any others? These are really terrific. Yeah.
Sitting in the dark, imagining galaxies, and what's for dinner?
Capturing the full range.
There you go.
Okay, so I hope you see how this didn't take you very long. It took, I think I gave you less than 4 minutes to do this, but by engaging in that creativity and that curiosity and thinking, it kind of got your wheels turning. So that's an example of a booster. And then finally, we have a launch pad. Here's an example of a launch pad. Think of something you've always assumed is true, but upon further inspection might not be true at all. Research it online to learn more about it. Be sure to read at least 3 different sources, right? Intellectual humility, don't just buy one thing. For example, many people have heard that creative people are right-brained. Is there any truth to this? This is just an example, but choose one relevant to you, something that you yourself hold to be true but are not entirely sure about it. And then people would write up their thoughts about what they did. Then, in addition to these behavioral measures, we also had the mindfulness component, where people were assigned to complete various mindfulness sessions. They were instructed about what mindfulness is, and they were encouraged to integrate their mindfulness with curiosity. So they were pinged at various times, and they had chose between 3 types of mindfulness sessions: mindful eating, mindful walking, and mindful hand washing. And you might not have even thought about that as even an option for mindfulness, but a lot of people don't necessarily have time to sit on a mat and engage in mindfulness, but hopefully everyone is washing their hands, right? And so if you wash your hands and pay attention and really notice the feeling of washing your hands, that changes things. So we added this for half the participants, in addition to being instructed on the various different curiosity boosters and elements. They also did this mindfulness instruction. So in the study, there was pre and post tests before the 21-day intervention and afterwards. And then we used a variety of questionnaires, including, and then we were interested in looking at it relative to the nutrition condition, whether or not, sorry, I got ahead of myself here. We then ran the study, and the bottom line findings is that this 14-day intervention relative to the nutrition condition led to significant increases in curiosity, creative behavior, and meaning in life. It also, to some degree, reduced boredom. And the mindfulness activities seemed to be a catalyst to make these effects even stronger. So it seems like there's like a 1-2 punch of the curiosity plus the mindfulness. This open mindfulness may be especially powerful. So these findings then suggest that cultivating curiosity and mindfulness, what might be referred to as open mindfulness, may foster human potential by some of the key elements, including creativity and meaning in life, which is one of the most important things that people can experience. So I think this is really sort of an interesting thing. They were focusing on curiosity and yet meaning in life, what just this core aspect of our existence, became more central for them. Okay, the next study I want to tell you about is a micro-intervention study where we tried to look at particular kinds of curiosity-inducing experiences. And the interesting thing about this study is it speaks to an issue that I brought up when I first started my discussion today, which has to do with the idea that the way to foster a trait is by increasing the state of it more regularly. If you can induce the state enough times, that can then lead to an enhancement of the trait. And so the implication of this is that the frequency with which people experience curiosity and openness may impact their change in curiosity and openness. So remember that curiosity is a central component of openness. 0.50 is it's a very large correlation for psychological findings. And the idea of fostering curiosity as a way to enhance openness makes great sense, particularly for curiosity, because it's such a natural dimension in which to think about the state-to-trait relationship. So we can talk about feeling curious at a particular time. So we all know that we can vary in how much curiosity we experience at any particular time. But we also know that there's some people who are particularly curious, the curious people. So the curiosity is really a nice example of a trait state that may have a close intermingling with one another. So the goal of the study then was to explore whether increases the frequency of curiosity in daily life for 14 days and see if that leads to changes in the trait. If we increase the state more often, will that lead to increases in the trait? So in this study, participants were assigned to different particular aspects of curiosity with what we're calling these micro-interventions, which only last a few minutes and that encourage a curious, open state. And I'll give you some examples. The different things that we looked at were finding beauty in the everyday, asking questions, breaking routine, and perspective taking. So let's look at examples of each one of these. And we had multiple examples of each one of these ones, but let's look at one example. So here is beauty in the mundane. Pause what you're doing and take a few minutes to focus on your surroundings. Look for something beautiful or interesting. Even if it seems ordinary at first glance, it doesn't need to be something inherently beautiful like a flower. It could be as simple as the way the light falls on the ground. Let your curiosity guide you. Set aside doubt and embrace the idea that something extraordinary is always hidden in the ordinary. And once you've found something, take a photo with your phone to capture that moment of discovery, then return to complete this survey. Or question asking. Pause what you're doing and take a few minutes to inquire into the world around you. Ask questions inspired by your immediate surroundings or current situation. Don't settle for simple factual questions like what time is it or what's for lunch. Instead, use this as an opportunity to engage your curiosity. For example, you might ask, how did this object end up here? What stories could this place tell if it could talk? Or how was that object made and how does it work? Try to ask questions that you are genuinely interested in knowing the answer to. Questions that spark your curiosity or make you wonder. Let your curiosity guide you. Set aside doubt and embrace the idea that there's something to be discussed at every moment. And then type at least 3 of your questions into the box below. Breaking routine. Pause what you're doing and take a few minutes to break from your usual routine. Interrupt what you're doing with something you wouldn't normally do. Depending on your current situation, choose from one of the following. Take a new route while walking. Close your eyes and tune into the sounds around you. You can identify where each sound is coming from. Move your body in an unfamiliar way. Keep shifting until you find a pose you've rarely, if ever, been in. Make a small change to your environment, and so on. And then lastly, perspective taking. Pause for a moment and take a few minutes to take on a completely new perspective. Choose someone around you to focus on, or if no one is nearby, select a fictional or historical figure. Imagine how they might be experiencing this moment. What thoughts could be running through their mind? How might they feel? How might their perspective differ from yours? And so on. And then finally, in the control condition, they were asked to reflect on what they'd eaten so far today. So seemingly useful activity, but not really in the service of curiosity. And so participants were assigned to one of these 5 different types of instructions, and they once a day for 14 days they received their assigned instructions, and they were prompts were provided at random times throughout the day via the smartphone, and they were encouraged to do it right when they got it because it's such a short activity. And then the post-activity questions, we measured, after they did these things, we measured their state. So the idea is that these experiences are going to foster states of curiosity and states of openness. So the state openness measure was, we asked participants to rate how the activity made them feel using 11 adjectives: intellectual, deep, artistic, imaginative, and so on. And then state interest, we asked them to indicate how curious they felt with items like, I currently feel like exploring new ideas. So what you can see here is we're inducing, hopefully, the state of curiosity and openness. And then we can see to what degree does that then lead to changes in trait openness and curiosity. And then the personality measures, we didn't actually measure openness in this study, but we did measure 2 things very closely aligned with openness: epistemic curiosity, things like I enjoy exploring new ideas, and I brewed for a long time in an attempt to solve fundamental problems, and then perceptual curiosity, I like to listen to new and unusual kinds of music. So this is the design of the study.
Could you go back to the
yeah.
slide really quickly?
Sure.
That's a good one.
What does epistemic mean?
Oh, epistemic means knowledge-based. So perceptual is sort of perception-based, and epistemic is knowledge-based. Other questions? Okay. Okay, so we had the baseline personality assessments. They did the 14-day intervention with one of the different micro-interventions, and then we measured their traits again. So we had 2 questions. The first question was, do the curiosity micro-interventions compared to the control lead to increased states of openness and curiosity? And immediately following the activity, and then if so, do the increased states of openness and curiosity predict trait level increases in curiosity? In other words, to the degree that people are experiencing openness and curiosity when they are doing these interventions, does that change in state openness, does that predict whether or not they're actually going to change their personality trait of openness or curiosity as a result? And the answers was yes. Oh, and then do the micro-interventions compared to the control lead to increased states of openness? All the interventions resulted in increased states of openness compared to the control. So we were effective in inducing states of openness and curiosity with these measures. But only the beauty and the mundane and breaking routine led to increased state interest curiosity. So if anything, we were more successful in manipulating openness than state openness than state curiosity. And then in turn, does the increased state of openness and curiosity predict trait level increases in curiosity? So were those people who experienced more of these states more likely to show change? And yes, to the degree that micro-interventions promoted states of openness, individuals saw personality change in both perceptual and epistemic curiosity. So again, we were able, with this app-based intervention, to increase curiosity, and in this study we were able to show that this increase was the result of the states of openness and curiosity that we had induced throughout the intervention. So the bottom line here is that routinely encouraging state openness enhances trait openness and potentially flourishing more generally because of all the things that are associated with state and trait openness. So the takeaway then, we got that. Okay, so exploring the effects, the final thing I want to talk to you about today is the impact of art. So one way to enhance state openness and curiosity is by engaging in the various different micro-interventions that I showed you before. But another one we have been speculating that may be very valuable is engaging in artistic experiences. That art, which is so closely aligned with openness to experience and aesthetics, may be a powerful way to induce state openness. So to explore this, we looked at the impact of these small, critically acclaimed, beautiful artistic films. So we had two conditions. Participants were randomly assigned either to the viewing art condition or a control condition. In the viewing art condition, they saw these various short films, which you can see have a real sort of aesthetic quality to them. They're a little bit avant-garde, so they sort of keep you a little bit off balance, which enhances this what's going on here and openness. You have to be open to sort of process them. And then the reason why we used animated shorts is we kind of feel like these are kind of art on steroids and also can be delivered in a very concise way. So they're multifaceted art forms that incorporate visual art, storytelling, and music. The entire visual world, character sets, and props is created by an artist. And it's a good fit for a tightly controlled laboratory experiments delivered via computer. These were done online. And lastly, we've done previous research which shows it to be effective. Now you might wonder, okay, what's going to be the control condition? What are we going to compare this to? And here we came up with, I think, a pretty compelling non-artistic control. Cute animal videos, right? I mean, these are fun. People laugh. People actually enjoyed these more than the artistic videos, but they're not really art. So that was the control. So we measured various different personality measures, including that were related to openness to experience. We randomly assigned participants to either the artistic short or a control video, and then we examined the impact of art on epistemic curiosity. And here we looked at two different kinds of curiosity. Interest curiosity, which involves a general delight in learning new things, and deprivation curiosity, which involves a uncomfortableness not knowing something. So it's kind of the positive and the negative aspects of curiosity. Actually, we've done a bunch more research on that, so happy during questions to talk about that. In this study, we used a state measure of interest curiosity and of deprivation curiosity. So interest would be, I currently feel like learning about subjects that are unfamiliar to me. Deprivation would be, I currently have a strong nagging sensation that I'm missing an important piece of information, a little FOMO there. And so they then also were given a behavioral measure, and this is really important because you want to see that these effects are not just driving people's self-reports, but also their actual behavior. So we gave them a topic paragraph, and then they could read that. They could continue to read that. They could read a paragraph from some other interesting article, or they could play some non-curious game. And the bottom line is we found that viewing the artistic films increased people's information seeking. So they were more likely to want to read about these new topics if they had just seen the artistic videos. They also reported more state deprivation curiosity and state general interest curiosity. So it increased their states of both kinds of curiosity. A second study, I'm getting close to the end here. A second study looked at conceptual expansiveness and verbal creativity. Conceptual expansiveness is this quality of being, well, I'll just show you how it works. So if I ask you how much does the following exemplar belong to the category vehicle, car, on a scale from 1 to 10, well, most people would probably say, 9 or a 10. But what about feet? how much do feet belong in the category of vehicle? And so the idea is that if you are more conceptually expansive, then you will be more likely to see feet as being a vehicle, or as a camel as being a vehicle. And then we also looked at verbal creativity. We gave people the prompt, stamp, letter, send, and then had them write a short story. And what you can see here, over-inclusive thinking is another term for conceptual expansiveness. The artistic films led to increase in conceptual expansiveness, and they led to increases in the quality of creative writing as measured by judges. So I think this is really striking. A 7-minute video is causing people to write more creative stories. Finally, the last study I want to tell you about, we looked at intellectual humility, which is the ability to appreciate perspectives other than your own. And then we had both a self-report measure where people endorsed statements such as, I'm willing to admit if I don't know something, and then also a behavioral measure in which we gave them the choice to read views on controversial topics that are counter to their own. And the bottom line is it worked mostly. We got the effect with respect to the self-reports of intellectual humility, so they were slightly more self-reported intellectual humility when they had seen the artistic film, although it didn't work with the behavioral measure, which it may be not that surprising because this measure had never been used before. So in short, artistic films have a positive effect on openness-related outcomes, including curiosity, creative thinking, conceptual expansiveness, and intellectual humility. And the idea is that what's happening here is that when you view these films, it's creating a state of openness, and that state of openness is then leading to all the things that are associated with it. It suggests, given our other studies, that if individuals did this regularly, it might lead to increased, long-enduring increases in openness to experience. In conclusion then, openness is a super virtue that is associated with many key qualities necessary for cultivating peace and well-being in the world, including creativity, curiosity, intellectual humility, concern for the future of humanity, and reduced prejudice, as well as longevity. Openness can be cultivated by mindfulness interventions, by psychedelics, by apps that encourage states of curiosity combined with mindfulness, and by apps that encourage state openness, including seeing beauty in the mundane, question asking, breaking routine, perspective taking, and artistic experiences. And I'm just going to... The big picture conclusion then is that cultivating mindfulness, sorry, that should be openness. Big picture. I was so big picture I couldn't even see the typo in my thing. Cultivating openness may enhance human flourishing in a manner that equals or even exceeds fostering mindfulness, and the combination may be especially powerful. I'd like to thank many people who contributed to this research, especially Madeline Gross, who really led the charge on most of this. This work has been funded by a whole host of different funding agencies, and as promised, if you are interested in trying this app out for yourself, here is a QR code for getting that app, so you can do that at your leisure. Thank you for your attention, and I would now be happy to take some questions. And maybe let's turn up the lights. Yeah?
Dr. Schuler, 2 questions. You alluded to both of these, I think, earlier, but I want to see if you could expand on them. It seems like curiosity and openness might be something that take a lot of energy. You sort of hinted that when people are doing the app, they might choose a harder curiosity task based on their energy level for the day. If there was like a Maslow's hierarchy of needs, is like curiosity and openness something that requires, like, is it at the top, something that requires a lot of energy? And my second question is openness, despite the fact that we have more opportunities than we've ever had for new experiences, is openness actually on the decline, I mean, in your estimation, amongst everybody?
Wow, those are 2 really good questions that I don't have great answers for. I would say that with respect to curiosity, that in the same way that people vary in their in the personality of openness, they're also going to vary in the amount of effort that it takes to initiate it. So some people are just absolutely naturally curious, and it's going to take little effort. Other people are less naturally curious, and it's going to take more effort. But I think the idea is that if you engage in curious engagement, sorry for the redundancy there, and you experience it as reinforcing, then that's going to make it easier the next time. You're not going to have to push yourself as hard because you're like, oh yeah, it's actually fun to try a new recipe, and that's going to make it interesting. There's also some interesting, this is another line of research that's going on in my lab, something known as learned industriousness, which is basically the idea that when you exert effort regularly, you find the experience of the effort itself to be reinforcing. And so the effort doesn't have that same aversive quality because you've learned, gee, when I try hard, good stuff happens. This feels good. It's a little bit like the pleasure you get when you make a list and you cross something off that list. That's really sort of reinforcing the learned industriousness. So even though it does require effort, it's an effort that can be pleasurable. With respect to openness, I don't know about like large scale. You could totally do large scale studies too. So I'm going to have to go back and check. I'm tempted to pull out my Perplexity and look it up right now. But as I mentioned before, I think in general, openness used to be associated with a left-leaning political orientation. And I really do think that the left lost a bunch of its openness with this whole cancel culture. I'll be offended if I hear things that disagree with me perspective. So by embracing that, representatives of openness lost their openness. So that would lead me to suspect that openness is in decline. But there's also, I mean, there's so much opportunity for openness. You know, so many interesting podcasts, and like the world is open to everybody if they just want to, if they're just curious. So it's certainly, there's a real potential for an increase in openness. All the resources are there. It's just a matter of getting people oriented towards exploring it. Great questions. Yeah?
So a follow-on to the young lady's question. So do you think we have it and lose it? Is there kind of a critical window for when openness might be beat out of us or go away? And then kind of getting back to the big picture, what next?
Yeah, so I think that there's a sort of gradual decline, probably from 20s on for many people, but not all people. There are people who sustain openness, to the very end. So it's I think it's probably a linear decline starting in the 20s. In terms of what's next, I'm currently the director of the Center for Mindfulness and Human Potential, and I always have felt a little bit sheepish about that. It was started by Mike Mrazek, who was truly mindful. Anyone who knows me, mindful would not necessarily be the term that came to mind, but open definitely would be. So I feel much more comfortable about being the director of an open center. So we are going to be shifting the Center for Mindfulness and Human Potential to the Open Center, which will stand for Openness, Human Potential, Experience, and Neurocognition. So it'll be open with an H. And the goal is basically to create assorted different programs for encouraging openness in many different ways. I should also emphasize that I do believe it's very valuable to be open-minded, but you don't want to be so open-minded that your brain falls out. And so it's important to balance openness with discernment. And so hopefully this will also be part of it, sort of finding the Goldilocks zone of openness where you get maximum bang for your buck. Great questions. Whoa, okay. Yeah, let's see. We'll get to everybody. Yes?
Curiosity may indicate where our desires might be. And my question is, based on your research, is there a particular distinction that's important to make between desire for abstract ideas, like what is justice, or what is universal brotherhood, which is a vertical axis of consciousness, whereas in addition to, not putting it down, the horizontal axis, which is how in everyday life we look at this thing and that thing. Could you say something about what you learned about curiosity for abstract ideas?
Yeah, so one thing that's been that's frustrating for me, we study mind wandering. That's actually what really the center should be, the study for mind wandering. That would be the one that would sort of best captured me. So we, when people are mind wandering, one of the things we often do is we ask them, what were you mind wandering about? And these are all students in our classes. They're taking, they're being exposed to courses on justice and consciousness and all these really interesting things. When you ask them what they're mind wandering about, if they're thinking about a course, it's not, what is the meaning of justice? It's like, what do I have to study on the test to get the A? They're worried about the grades, not about the material. And so our sense is that when the curiosity that people tend to exhibit tends to be more on the mundane level and less on this sort of more abstract level. There is value in the mundane. I hope I persuaded you that just being curious about the movement of light is a value. But cultivating this other more epistemic, more abstract kind of curiosity, I think, would be very helpful. And in that regard, a term that we've been trying to promote without much success so far is a particular kind of mind wandering. The kind of mind wandering that we think may be especially helpful is curious mind wandering about abstract topics, especially, which we call mind wondering. And so we are, another thing on the agenda is to encourage mind wondering. Okay, let's see. I think, yes, right here. You're writing, yeah.
Oh, yeah. I am curious about something. So you were talking about these personality trait kind of things.
Mm-hmm.
And I've always kind of wondered, like, why I have always been curious, but then I meet people who aren't curious at all. And I'm curious about that. And then all joking aside, but really, like, what makes, is that like your nurture, is that your nature? Did that get passed down? Is this what my parents took us traveling all the time, and my mom was an artist, so it's like, oh, and did other people not get that? I'm just, like I said, I'm
curious,
curious.
Yeah. Well, I mean, one thing that our research suggests is that experience does matter, that it's not just hardwired, because you can give people these experiences and make them more curious. So for sure, there's going to be hardwiring. Some people are just very likely to be just naturally more curious than others. But in addition, the experiences that they've had contribute to their curiosity. And it's a lot, you can think of it a lot like a set point with weight. So, some people are naturally lighter, some people are naturally heavier, but you can move that set point through the things that you take in. And in the same way, some people are naturally more curious, some people are naturally less curious, but all of them can be increased by the habits that they engage in. Yeah, great question. Yes?
I have a question. I wonder if AI is promoting the openness or causing declining.
That is a great question. Also something that we are very interested in. And I think the answer is exactly as you framed it, that both possibilities are there, and it really has to do with the way that people use it. If people, instead of actually doing the research to do their papers, just asks AI to do it for them, they're going to lose their curiosity because they don't have to engage in self-exploration. And in general, there's this quality that people have where they will do the minimum amount of effort that they have to, and to the degree that they don't have to work as hard or think as hard because AI is doing stuff for them, that could reduce curiosity. But at the same time, You can ask any question that you want with your $20 a month ChatGPT program, and it will give you a pretty good answer. And then you can follow up on that and ask more questions. And so the opportunity for very easily exploring curiosity is just right there. I actually think that what we need to do is to encourage people to recognize AI as an opportunity for exploring interesting questions just for the sake of exploring interesting questions. If they, for example, get persuaded that being curious will help them live longer, then, in addition to doing their gym workout or whatever else they're doing to promote, they'll spend some time just asking good questions. And we have a lot of research, pioneered by Madeline, showing that question asking is a very, very powerful way of enhancing curiosity, and AI is an amazing outlet for question asking. Also, with respect to art, one thing we think is very possible is if viewing artistic things leads to increases in openness, what about producing artistic things? And some people may feel, well, I'm not an artist. But if you can collaborate with AI, so that picture that you all saw of openness and flourishing, I did that. Right? So I can feel very proud of my artistic ability for creating. I mean, I did it with AI, but I gave it the prompts. And so the idea is that it may be that if people feel a collaborative engagement with AI in terms of producing art, then that may also foster curiosity in the same way that exposing people to art, and maybe even more because they feel more collaborative. So time will tell, but I think there really are ways to channel AI in productive directions. Yeah?
Have you tracked openness with vulnerability at a personal level?
Yeah, there is actually some research that showed that, I think it showed, I have to go back and take a look at this, but I think it showed that individuals who were open to experience, some of them, their response to trauma was larger because they really sort of let it in. And I have to double check that reference, but there are some situations where openness can lead to increased vulnerability. We also found, we looked at what people wrote about, the content of their writing as a function of openness. We found that people who are high in openness to experience were more likely to be open to dark topics like death and mortality and the like. So I think that's, in addition to the concern of being so open-minded your brain falls out, you also want to be careful about being so open that it makes you too receptive to painful things. Yeah?
I was wanting to explore it in the other direction, back out, that someone who's suffered trauma, and throw out figure 99% of the Western world's in that position at present, only through vulnerability can they open out.
I see. Yeah, I have to go back to double check that. But it certainly stands to reason that somebody who is open to experience is going to be able to explore the challenges in a deeper way. So I think of Viktor Frankl and a man, or the search for meaning. He was a concentration survivor who had the most traumatic experiences you can possibly imagine, but he faced them with openness, and then he processed them afterwards with openness. So I think that there's a real possibility that that's there, although I don't know the literature on that as well as I should. Yeah?
I don't remember if there was a correlation between openness and empathy, but have you guys looked at that? And is there a correlation, or is it almost like they block each other?
No, there is definitely a correlation between openness and empathy. There's also a correlation between openness and personal interactions. If you think about it, so what is the key aspect of openness? Curiosity. What is the most powerful element in conversation? Curiosity, right? If somebody is curious, they're going to ask you interesting questions. They're going to be genuinely engaged in the conversation, so it's going to create for more connection, and they're also going to have more knowledge, so they're going to be more interesting. So Curiosity seems to also be associated with a concern with one's own feelings and with other people's feelings. So all of those things contribute to empathy and also to the quality of interpersonal relationships. Yeah?
So being curious, being open-minded is affected by the environment we live in, by our experiences. As we grow, that diminish. Any studies done about cultural references, religious groups, countries, backgrounds, sex, male, female versus something another that is more to be more open than others.
Oh, so you're asking sort of what are the demographics of...
Asian people being more curious than ethnic white Caucasians or Latinos or so?
Yeah, I mean, that's a challenging topic. I actually, which fortunately I can admit largely ignorance to. The two things that I know for a fact is that three things. One is that openness is associated with intelligence, so more intelligent people tend to be more open. The second thing is it's associated with age. As people get older, they tend to get less open. And the third thing is that openness is associated with political orientation. In general, people who are sort of more to the left tend to be more open than to the right. And I don't know about the other demographics, and I might just keep it that way. Yeah.
Okay, my question's about sleep, humor, and empathy. So I was kind of curious with openness, if it leads to better sleep, more humor, and greater empathy.
Before I was going to say it definitely is associated. Now, one thing we have to be careful of, and our experiments are beginning to get at this, but there's a difference between correlation and causation. So if you see, for example, that openness is associated with greater intelligence, that doesn't necessarily mean that the openness caused the intelligence. It could well be that the intelligence caused the openness, or vice versa. And so in many of these correlations, we don't really know the causal direction. Although now, because we're now able to manipulate openness, we can begin just now to get at some of these questions that have eluded us up until now. So with respect to, let's see, we had sleep, humor. Yeah. So you can get this. I can get the humor one backwards, working backwards. So humor is associated with intelligence, and openness is associated with intelligence. So people who are high in openness are going to have a more humor, at a minimum, simply by virtue of their intelligence. Also, openness is associated with creativity, and humor involves creativity. So it is almost assured that openness is going to be associated with more creativity. Quality of sleep, that one I don't know, but that could possibly be, Danny, we can explore this. This could be a possible liability of openness, because you could imagine as you're trying to fall asleep, your mind is like curiously thinking about this thing, curiously thinking about that thing. That may not be conducive to sleep. So sleep would be an interesting topic. But dreams, probably it is associated with interest in dreams and remembering dreams. Great question.
We're going to have to bring this to a close.
Oh.
I know. That's okay.
I'll stick around.
Bounce on 'em after.
Yeah.
Yeah, you can. Are you going to say a few?
Sure. Wow. Well, thank you, Jonathan. You really got curiosity going in this room tonight. So some of the takeaways that I have here are that mindfulness has been on the rise, but not everyone has been able to cultivate a meditation practice. But openness is something that can help us on that path. Other traits such as conscientiousness, extroversion, and agreeableness are all traits that we can cultivate. The importance of creativity can be seen across work, relationships, and our day-to-day activities. There is a close relationship between being open and positive, and curiosity drives us to live richer, longer lives. Having an active mind fosters health and reduces prejudice and authoritarianism. We learned how openness can be enhanced by practicing meditation, yoga, exercise, and mindfulness instruction. Psychedelics can lead to sustained openness and greater music. Okay, that. Just wanted to see who was paying attention. We learned about the Mindful Curiosity app, which can help us to identify patterns that help us to stay open and curious, and how we can make everyday experiences more meaningful. Curiosity can be cultivated, and we can rewire our brains to help us be the people we most want to be. Breaking our routines from things as simple as sitting at a different place at the table can go a long way in helping us to stay open and creative. We cultivated creativity in this very room tonight with the creation of our own haikus. And I am very grateful to the Institute of World Culture for recording all of this so that we can all go back to hear the haikus that were created this evening, because there are definitely some great ones. We learned how art and humorous videos can help to induce a state of openness and create joy and keep our intellectual humility in check. From a booster to a launch pad, our minds were expanded. From those of us who are naturally curious to others who are not, we can all feel hopeful about becoming more open and able to live expansive lives. Thanks to you, Jonathan Schooler, our lives have been disrupted in the very best of ways. Let us go forth with greater mindfulness, openness, and curiosity, and maybe even make a silly video.
Wow, yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, well, thank you all, and I think there's still some refreshments, so please stick around. Oh, can we put the QR code back up?